I feel a bit like buses. I've never been had in the queue for 20 years, and I've been here in this lecture theatre twice in 2 months. Have you heard? So if anyone's heard all my stuff before, then I do apologise. You have permission to doze off. It feels quite a good place to do that. There's not a good atmosphere about it. So I suppose I'm not going to be talking so much about the traditional sort of engaging communities in green space, and that's been talked about beautifully already. I'm going to be trying to talk about how we should use paid people to engage with communities, because these are the people that are here. These people, you know, we're on the site regularly, and we're a kind of unofficial way for residents to respond to what they want. And when you're there on on this basis, people are much more comfortable about talking to you. And of course, you meet everyone or most people on the estate. And I always use this picture of ear protection, because this is the barrier to grounds maintenance staff, the people who care for places. This is the barrier for talking to people, because most of I'm talking about social housing green space here. I'm not talking about Dixter or Kew. I'm talking about low budget, cut grass, trim hedges, poison a bit of hedge, and go. That sort of maintenance, which is what most social housing estates are faced with generally. And most of that requires these things, doesn't it? So you have to have these on, or you have a protective suit to spray herbicide. And these are the barrier to people, because the most important part of the job is talking to residents. You know, it really is the most important part of the job, and it's the part of the job that will dictate what you actually do completely, or should do, because these are your residents are the people that live in this place. I don't live there. All my job essentially is to make the place function better and work better for the people that live there. And we've touched on this a bit earlier. This whole ridiculous, utterly ridiculous funding stream process of capital money, all capital money, no revenue funding. So here's this kind of typifies it. You know, they've managed to manufacture a spade to get 3 different trees to stand there. You know, Jesus Christ. I mean, you know, and then they've planted the tree. The tree gets planted. It's too big. It's not going to get watered. There's going to be a guy on £9 an hour, maybe looks after it once or twice. You know, so all the emphasis is on the pitcher, the stainless steel spade pitcher. That's where all the emphasis is. What happens after that? We don't give a shit after that, because we've got the pitcher, the funders are smiling, everyone's happy. And somehow we've got to take a proportion of this money, which we can get, you know, on our estate in Hackney, so-called deprived area, always could get loads of money to build stuff. Never could get money to pay local gardeners, to pay people to look after spaces. That's what we need. We don't need any more staff a lot of the time. We just need more people. We, in the end, had to cheat this system because it was so crap. So we basically took the money, and then we didn't build a pergola with it. We gave it to a gardener to look after the space, you know, because that's the only way you can do this thing. They won't give you it for people. They'll only give you it if you can make something with it. So I'm just going to run through. I'm either going to overrun or I'm going to have to stop short of slides. That is the standard procedure for when I do a talk. So please tell me when to stop. But so I'm going to run through some of the things we did on Clapton Park Estate, which we looked after for 18 years. Some of the things that I think worked, some of the things that definitely didn't work. So this definitely did work. Maps are great. So everybody knows maps. And this was a hand-drawn map that one of our residents drew. I can't remember why or for what reason. It was kind of less elaborate than this. And then I got my techie son, he vectorized it. I think that's the word. He vectorized it. So that meant we could then use it for everything for big, for small, you know, and then we just added all the green space. We put on all the good bits. We obviously haven't highlighted the really bad bits on our estate that we didn't look after very well. We haven't highlighted those for good reason. But all the bits that we did do something interesting with highlight. So maps really good, signs really good, but and then the sign on the left less good. So this is our sign that we had. It's like some sort of, I don't know, it feels like you're entering some sort of war zone. You know, you are entering, you're not happy, we're not pleased about you being here, but you're entering the housing estate. Look, loads of tags, constantly cleaning off graffiti, obviously. Why would you want that sign? That says nothing, is it? So all we did was we left that sign there because, you know, that feels like a nice relic. People remember how bad that was. And we just riveted the new sign on top of it. Nice and cheap. That works really well. You know, really cheap, really easy. Stuck the map on because we know maps work. Stuck some flowers on because people like it. It's a nice bright bit of colour. And then we said, welcome, welcome, come into our estate, come into the estate. You know, and then we stuck some plants under it, and we stuck a bee post for solitary bees in it. You know, cheap, pretty cheap. We put a bit of world mesh up the back to grow a climber up. We built a square raised bed, very easy. Put some plants in it, put a post in, drill some holes for bees. So immediately, if you see that when you come onto the estate, I hope you think, yeah, this is good. I'd like to come into this estate. I'd like to come into. And we did. To sort of continue that thing, we had a kind of corporate sign, and again we drilled it for bees. So we made the actual sign alive with invertebrates in effect, which is quite a good sign. And then the other thing we did, because we had a little bit of an issue with joyriding and people driving through my lovely railings, because I love these old railings, these old galvanised railings. I love railings; they are really good. But I'll talk about that later. But anyway. So we had the car go through our railing, and again, it's these things about, oh, do we put another metal railing back? We put the same thing back. We don't have to. They don't have to. People don't moan if you don't, to be honest. So we used local coppice timber, and we made a bit of a softer fence, only for that section where the car drove through. It goes back to the railings after that. So it's just thinking. It's just always, I think, thinking that you don't have to do things the same way. You don't have to do it. And people are very relaxed about doing things. We found. Here's a good sign. Okay, so these things are really good, aren't they? They really work. So you put them on, it's really easy. It is honestly easy. You put them on, stick them on the end wall of the end terrace, don't you? No ball games. No one plays ball games once you put them up. It's brilliant. Perks every time. Perfect. But obviously not. So we removed all these because again they're useless. It's like no fouling, no fouling. What's that mean? I mean, and then the image of a shit with a stick coming off. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. So people were like, I'm not going to go there because it said no fouling on the sign. Obviously, I'm not. So all these signs pretty much useless. You've got to talk to people as people in a normal way, please, thanks, this makes sense. There's kids use this space, anything other than this. Really. So we used a lot of these A4 laminated. I used to do them when I was on my way to work. I used to print them on the printer, laminate, which takes seconds. Doesn't matter if they get pulled off. They rarely did, to be fair. And they're just, please, thank you, normal, just normal behaviour, decent, normal behaviour to talk to people, and they definitely do work. They definitely work in comparison to that previous one. So, I guess this is my brother, by the way, who's an incredibly reluctant gardener. He really didn't. He hated what we did, but it made him a few quid, so he was okay about it. And of course, we didn't pull this. He didn't pull this this is a common mallow, as you gardeners must know. Massive taproot. We didn't pull that out of the ground like that for 3 foot. That was growing along a landscape fragment for 3 foot like that. So it wasn't quite as difficult to make that. Anyway, hand weeding is space. So hand weeding, it's completely, it's not in a social housing maintenance contract, pretty much. It's not in it. But hand weeding means you can take off ear protection, can't you? You can take off ear protection and you can care for a space and you can talk to people at the same time. And that just massive difference if you start doing it. And then we were talking about this at lunchtime, actually, the mowing thing. That's great fun, mowing now. Nowadays, you can do all that. No mow. We've got this new thing where we can scalp mow now. So scalp mow, set the thing to the lowest of the go, and you scalp the ground, and you open up bits of sward for ground nesting bees. It's really easy. All you've got to do is just adjust the height of the mower, and you get all this habitat suddenly appear. So that is probably the cheapest and easiest way to affect the biodiversity of your estate. And the other thing you can do is you can walk around and find where the weediest bits of grass are, and that's where you can leave them, and that's where you don't need to come. But always have the respect to make sure you keep. One is obviously make sure that people want this outside their house, that they want long grass outside there, or they're okay about it. And if they are, make sure it's tidy around the grass. Make sure that everything has a precision and a care to it to allow you to leave the stuff to grow more. Don't have the arrogance of saying, here's your biodiversity, you know, come on. It's really good for the environment. This looks terrible all winter outside your house. Really terrible. Traps litter, really looks crap. But it's good for biodiversity. Don't ever do that because it's never going to work. So. And I know with a lot of the speakers so far have talked about food. And food, we've found certainly food crucial, completely crucial to engagement. Because I mean, our estate is that wonderful estate of a huge mixture of cultures, and what was the thing that held them all together? What was probably the one thing I could think about that they all had in common was this love of food and understanding of food and culture of growing stuff, you know. And this is Enver. He grew these in his garden in the urban island that is London. So. Unbelievably important food. And what happened, and these are just a few lovely, I mean, these images I love. This has nothing to do with us. This is just a resident growing out polystyrene boxes. I'm assuming from one of her friends that owns a restaurant. I don't know, she might eat that, I don't know. I'm assuming she's supplying their local restaurant. And this picture, my favourite picture, this is 18 years worth of effort has resulted in this. So no plants, no greenery, just Zainab feeling comfortable about baking bread outside her house. That is, to my mind, the complete success of grounds maintenance contracts in that photo. You know, I mean, this gives me so much joy, you know, because the story behind this was that we had the usual social housing rectangular rose beds. You know those ones? Been there about 50 years, nearly dead. Herbicide around them all the time for years and years, you know, flowers once, you know, 3 weeks of flower, the rest of the time it was terrible. And one day we noticed a line of coriander underneath in the impoverished soil of the rose bed, which coriander probably quite happy about. And that was the kind of key, and I just thought, this is utterly ridiculous. We're looking after this pathetic rose bed for all these years, and this woman wants to grow food outside her house, and we, in essence, we're not letting her do it. So we took the roses away, which was a joy. It was a total joy, and no one cared, because they were so awful. Gave Zainab some space to grow food. She's been looking at this bit of space for about 30 years, suddenly grows food. She's obviously an incredible food grower, Kurdish, Turkish, amazing food grower. So she grew all this food, and then once she was comfortable with that, then she started to bake bread, and the family came out. She collected. I mean, obviously, the contract manager doesn't need to know this, because this is not really strictly, it's not really allowed. Go and collect a load of varnished wood around the estate and having a fire in the community garden. That's not. But we didn't tell him. He didn't care. He didn't look. He didn't go around very much, did he? He didn't wander around. He didn't really care that much. So that was all good. So that is a joy, great joy. So off the back of Zainab, off that sort of success, that again was driven by residents. So this is the thing about maintenance. So although obviously I had inherited food growing would be a good thing, it was the seeing residents, seeing Zainab do that was the driver. And residents have been the driver for everything we did on the estate, I'd say. Well, for sure, I'd say. So we thought, oh yeah, we're going to make loads of allotments. So we started to give space for allotments, and we had no control over it. There was no waiting list. There was no organisation. In fact, there was no list at all. And so what happened was, every time we came back, or every month or so, there'd be a bit more lawn gone. So there'd be a bit more grass gone, and more grass gone. And which obviously I was kind of going, and there was an element. Obviously, there's a whole bunch of residents who live in this block that don't grow food and don't want that. And the other thing is the mess. And the quantity of corner shop carrot bags is excessive. So we had, and again, this is another thing about maintenance. So we were there regularly. We got the allotments going, and then we kept an eye on it. We looked after it. We tried to sort out the conflicts. Because we were there regularly, we knew people, there was a better chance of doing that. Because otherwise, these things can turn into war zones, as you probably all know, if you're not careful. And so we had to moderate the plastic bag thing. We had to try and make it a space that looked a bit better. We had to do all those things. And then again, on the back of the allotment thing, we just I thought, well, why don't we just grow food everywhere? And I was a bit buoyed up by it at the top there. Why don't we just grow food everywhere? So what we did was, any new public space planting, any new planting, we just put food, right? Because it didn't matter, right? What if a Mahonia died? No one's going to tell me to put that back. Shame that you put Mahonia back there. There's been one there for 50 years. Why didn't you replace it with the same thing for another 50 years? So we just put a gooseberry bush in, or a red currant bush, or anything, right? It doesn't matter whether it's the right place for it. It didn't matter whether it's the perfect position for it. It didn't matter whether it's going to crop well. Doesn't matter. It's it's food, and people notice the green space as soon as you put food in. And then if you get really lucky and you manage to convince people that it is their space. So this, I can't remember this lady's name actually, but this lady, I came over to her to congratulate her because she was picking the red currants, and she obviously thought I was going to tell her off. You can just see that in her face, and she was like, "Whoa, hang on, don't tell me off." So, but I wasn't. I was going to congratulate her, and because there's that massive disconnect between the bits of public space around all these social housing. They're there. What are those bits of grass and green for? Only for they're for the residents. But people had no idea, just didn't have any connection to them, and they definitely didn't think they were theirs. So as soon as we started to put food in, then people started to actually take the stuff, and then they knew it was theirs. And then once they got that in their head, then they started to boss me around to remove all the other stuff around the food plants. That's what I guess, yeah. Because my brother always just take the mickey out of me, because all the Turkish women, if they saw me working anywhere, they just run up to me and tell me, cut it. Cut all that stuff, because that's not food. Here's the food. We don't want those flowery stuff. We want the food. So so there was a bit of that going. So there's a diplomacy, but this is the joy and the privilege of working in public green spaces. It's making those decisions. It's coming to those compromises. It's that role that blokes who cut grass can make, because that's in effect what maintenance people do. That's the only credit they get. On the whole, you're a grass cutter. That's what you are. And then once I'd got up to speed with this, and once I'd tuned in a bit more with what I understood, we realised, and I didn't realise this before, but dolma and grapevine leaves, massive deal for those of our residents. Really, really love it. You can't go out to the supermarket and buy them very easily. Having them on tap on the estate. So as soon as we started to plant grapevines up, railings, brilliant trees. Don't remember railings, they're the best thing. So great, and the Turkish, they're not interested in the grapes, because they're smart, they know. It's a bit of a faff, and they're growing grapes in the UK. You have to keep taking so many off, wait for them to get big and full of hips. They're not really all that, are they? but the leaves, reliable, easy, guaranteed, and fresh. So that was a genuinely a winner for me. And then we started to do things like herb beds, more problematic because more maintenance to keep those things going. And look, this is the joyous thing. So picking grapevine is one of the most, one of the best things we do is just plant random grapevines on the railings. Definitely a popular thing. And again, it's this whole cultural thing, you're trying to tune into what people there want, because this is another example. So this is an almond. So first of all, with the fruit tree, I did what my granddad did. So I did the, here we are, I'm a white bloke, I've just walked onto the estate. I think we need fruit trees, we're going to plant apples, pears, well, they don't want them. They don't want them, obviously. They want figs and almonds and medlars, and they, so it's that. And I made that mistake definitely when we started. So as soon as you get that kind of tuned in, then it's really exciting because you start to pick up all the things that people actually do want. So almonds, and the thing I didn't realise about almonds. So these girls are picking almonds when they're tiny. Yeah, I didn't know this. And so they pick them when they're tiny, and then they eat the whole thing, skin, furry stuff, everything. And I walked over and I thought, and then they explained to me, obviously, within reason, we understood each other, what they were doing. And then obviously they offered me one to eat. God, it was terrible. Well, in my palate, but again, it's this classic thing of not understanding. We do understand each other. I understand them now, but I understand that tasted bad to me and it tastes good to them. So it's that whole thing. But once that starts to happen, and you're working as maintenance in a estate, it's a joy. That starts to really make sense. And then I gave a nod to the hipster community around my estate. I mean, not much, but I did a little bit. These are hops, and we found out what the local craft brewers were using in their beers, and then we grew the varieties that they were using. But I do like hops. The hops are a brilliant plant anyway, because they grow up every year. They do that. They don't carry on going up into your gutters, do they? Well, they sometimes do, but not often. And then they die back every year. So you don't have the maintenance issue, do you? So we grew these up the gas pipe, because hops only need one thing, don't they, to grow up. So really, really useful hops. And then the other thing you realise, of course, when you're working on an estate, it's like a community. So the cleaners, this is Tony, best cleaner, top cleaner, and me, we used to have this thing. He used to moan at me because I used to forget to spray the weed or forget to do something affected his job, and then I used to moan at him because I'd find litter in some of my stuff. But it's that kind of, that crossover, that informal sort of crossover thing that's so amazing about when you're there on the estate regularly. Oh, and the other thing they did was, which is really rather lovely. So eventually, because we grew, one of the first things we did, which I forgot to mention, but the first things we did was we sowed annuals along with railing edges. Because when we first got there, all the railing edges were dirt, so we never herbicide for those years. And as a gardener, I looked at that and said, yeah, that's a weed-free site. That's a seriously weed-free site because it's been sprayed for years and years. And eventually, and that was a win, because that was colour. It wasn't food, it was colour. Because colour's the other thing. And we become so well known for these railings that I had to put them on all the railings. I didn't have to, I did. And they eventually changed the name. Well, they called the Collective Park Estate the Poppy Estate. So wonderfully, green space maintenance had changed the name of the estate, which was cool. These are some of the things we did. Oh, this thing they gave us the electricity board with. Oh yeah, we're going to donate you a cable drum. Right? This cable drum, it was from sort of here. The width was about 5 foot. Right? I don't know what I thought we were going to do with it. I mean, there's a table, it would have been up here. So. Anyway, someone suggested we could make a shed out of it, and then we did. You see how big it is? So it's a joke stand. It's a huge thing. And then we've done things like this, but obviously, we had a good chat with the person that lives in that house. We just didn't bolt these things on the side. although that has been done, you know, so that's really important that these things are talked about. I've got time for a rant about this. So this is a SUD scheme. I don't know if you've done SUD schemes, or you guys are involved in SUD scheme. This was a SUD scheme that was foisted on us on our estate. It just in the pavement near our estate. They dug a hole, massive cost, huge amount of infrastructure in it, take loads of stuff out, put loads of stuff in. And obviously the guy who's done the specification had to specify what was going to go on top very carefully. So in comes the sticky skips on top, sort of, you know, to finish off. And then, of course, the council, in their wisdom, rewilded it. I mean, what a great idea. Let's rewild. Let's just dump a load of sticky topsoil, high fertility, and leave it. I wonder what's going to happen. What would happen to that, surely? Yeah, what would happen is it gets full of Canadian fleabane, brambles, nettles, coarse grass. Okay, I know they deliver some biodiversity, but Hackney is full of this stuff. We don't need any more of this stuff. We need a diverse plant community, and we could have had a low fertility substrate go on that with a bit of care, with a seed mix that could have been hugely more biodiverse, much more diverse, and more importantly, would have shown some respect to the people that live here. No consultation. And then this utterly middle class rubbish of rewilding the space and leaving it like that. Really terrible. Here's a little suds thing we did. We walked around and looked where all the broke pavement was, and then we thought, oh, that must mean the sub base underneath is pretty terrible. So then we'll just lift those up, and then we'll put some sand down, and we'll plant some herbs and various other things. Very small scale, very easy, and has some respect for the people that live in there. So what happened was, after the 18 years, I was pretty worn out, pretty much. And so we decided to stop after 18 years. But what was really lovely was they asked us to write a contract. Alex said we were the contractor. They asked us to write a contract for the new tender process, which we did. And I was obsessive about the detail in this contract to make sure that whoever took it over couldn't get out of it. You know, like actually every single green space we wrote a detailed thing. This is what we need to do, blah, blah, blah. The other thing we did, we decided to split the contract into two. So we had the boring stuff, which is pretty much what the old contract was, which was the grass cutting, the hedge trimming, that stuff, which big companies do perfectly efficiently, perfectly well on a big scale. And then on the other, and then the other part of the contract was the creative maintenance, which we were hoping would be given to a local gardener or a local contractor. And then hopefully the big contractor and the small contractor would work together, and then there would be an overlap and a feedback loop. That was my kind of vision. It didn't happen, obviously. It was all given to IDB, which, you know, I think that we start to look at contracts properly, and obviously we start to invest in this. This stuff doesn't come completely for free. It only came for free because I was very keen. But you know, you can't rely on that. It needs to be in a contract, and we need to invest in it a bit, because adding 10 grand to a contract, so in my contract, we charge about 43,000 a year to look after the whole estate, 120 bits of green space. Cheap, and ridiculously cheap. So if we could add 10 grand to that, which is, and 10 grand, like you were saying earlier, get 10 grand easy, can't you just apply for 10 grand for infrastructure, get it easy. If we could just add that to contracts, then you could add 2 local gardeners to do 1 or 2 days a week, let's say, all through the summer, couldn't you? Virtually. I can't remember the maths of it, but anyway, it could get you quite a lot of labour with it. And that labour is the best investment, because most of the things we did on the estate that were good were tweaks. They weren't massive infrastructure, massive design. They were just changes to the way we looked after the space, which is really cheap. So this is part of the contract. I tried to emphasise it completely again and again and again. And we split the, you know, I've only given 1 line to the routine maintenance because that's very boring. And then, so we've sort of said that a good maintenance team can improve community biodiversity and health. In other words, we are looking for people that look beyond the basic maintenance tasks and into the potential of the maintenance to improve residents' life. These are the principles we'll be looking for. So we emphasised it completely to the new contractors. And this is green space number 9. So look, I talk about the individual grapes, the individual hops, all those individual things, so that the contract manager, I was hoping, could stand at green space number 9 and go, okay, it says here you're supposed to have done this, this, and this, and you haven't. And there's no get out there. That's what I was hoping. Obviously with COVID and everything, we finished just before COVID, and I haven't been involved very much since, so I'm not quite sure how things happen. Anyway, we talked about that. This was the sort of railing stuff. Now I know this only looks like this for a very short amount of time. Most of the time it doesn't look very exciting, but people really loved this, just even for the short space of time it was there. We even did hay cuts. That's for my brother looking miserable again. Think of the money, Rob, think of the money. Anyway, so yeah, hay cuts, that's a joyous thing, isn't it? Taking some hay, and we'd stack that on site as well. We'd find a nice quiet corner somewhere just to stack that, because that's brilliant habitat immediately, lets it rot down, no green space, green waste. But once we'd done the hay cut, very tidy. Raked it all, mowed it all, made it look very tidy, and then when we did the next bit, we did the same again. That's showing some respect to the people that are living there, you know, very carefully doing it. And we were talking, I mean, this is sort of as near to like what you call proper community engagement we did. I mean, in this particular piece of ground, this is such a beautiful spot. This is just right next to the Lee Navigation Canal near Cowbridge, but just a piece of grass, obviously just a piece of grass. Like every other section has a piece of grass or a shrub. Very sort of underused, very difficult to make it look like it's cared for, so therefore more open to abuse. So we did get funding for this easily, capital projects, really easy, and we built more allotment space, and the allotments are only 8 foot square. That's the other thing we learned at work. So very small allotments, because it was unbelievable what people grew in that space, and you didn't have that kind of whole arduous people taking on allotments and then can't cope with it. You know, 8 foot square works really well, and you know, it's just a place you want to. We've still got a big bit of grass here for people to play football on, definitely. You know what I mean? We didn't take the whole space up. These are just a quick examples to play. This is just a classic, and I know we've been talking a bit about parks, and obviously parks get a lot of attention, but to my mind, these scrappy bits of green space right up against people's houses are the important bits, and they always get forgotten, because on the whole, we haven't got the part of the community that raises money or gets crowdfunding to do these spaces. Parks, you do get that, but you don't often on these bits. So that was what it kind of was. Mind you, it wasn't that difficult to make that better. Really, that's the other good thing. If you start on a really low base, think about that as a career. That's it, because it's worked for me so well. I've always moved to places that are really bad to start with, and then you can't go far wrong. You know what I mean? You're only doing little tweaks. Here's another lovely space, beautiful. Like that for years like that. Now again. This is all the best pictures, looking the shiniest, it doesn't look like this all the time. And, you know, there was certain issues with this space that wasn't perfect. But anyway, better than it was. This is a good one. I love this. This is amazing. I don't know, anyone has an idea what this is all about? It's just a kind of, was it a 60s thing where you just hung out on brick walls or got off your face, hanging off these things? I don't know what it is. What does that do? I don't know. But the good thing was it sort of formed a few squares, so we just sort of filled in the squares with timber and stuff, and then just put plants. We just put plants. This is another space when we turned up, and you know, I mean, rewilded. It's rewilded. So that's cool now. That's cool. You know, and sadly, not many railings left. They've got rid of that. I like the gate post that's still there. Anyway, so that became that space. So infrastructure money obviously important for things like that because they were so awful. and then and then the wonderful and privileged thing about looking after public green space, especially on social housing, especially where we were, where the expectations were so appalling and so low, you have huge flexibility. You have that lovely thing where you can just try stuff because it's better than what's there. It doesn't matter. Because I am not a skilled person at plant skills. Absolutely not. I'm skilled at chucking seed around. That's what I'm skilled at. And then I'm really good at weeding. So I tend to go plant skids. Our plant skids are put the seed everywhere, and then the first 2 years pull out and you don't want. That's the technique I use. Much easier than writing anything on paper. Anyway, I think how much time have we got?
Well, we've got 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
That's if we want questions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
sorry.
you've already
I told you I could just flick through these. This is what usually happens. So, and we did some open days. We got involved in the Chelsea Fringe thing. That was quite good. You know, so we got people from outside the estate come down and we showed them around. Residents did big barbecues and various things as they were going. And that was quite good. And then we collect seeds because obviously a lot of this stuff sells seeds so readily. We collected seeds. That's it. That's not too bad.
How those areas of development, I really enjoy that. Have we got any questions?
Thanks, John. Always inspirational. John, what anecdotal follow-up have you got about the idea of early taking this over, and what lessons could we learn from?
Yeah, from what I can tell, it's probably not as good as I expected it to be. And I'm thinking, you know, although I was obsessive about getting that detail into the contract, that then you've got to rely on the next bit, which is your contract manager enforcing it. And that I think is probably what's happening, because a lot of contract managers, they're, you know, cleaning and greening gets lumped together. They're probably not a person that has any understanding of gardens and horticulture.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that may be the weak link. So getting the contract changed was key. I thought he was going to do it, but maybe it's the next. It's the monitoring of the contract.
And I think it'd be useful for you to go back and make observations and update when you do this presentation again, because this is a process that needs to be.
I think without COVID,
So.
And I'm not having to go over it. I'm not making out this easy. It's obviously much more difficult for a big organisation. That's why I wanted to try and store it. And the other thing I wanted to try and do is, by doing these contracts, you are giving people a better job. A way better job than just cameras. You're making the job a decent job, making it an important. Well, it is an important job, but making it people feel valued for what they're doing, because that's what changing contracts does. For sure.
Yeah. John, can you hear me? Yeah. John, explain. You said, are you a local resident? Do you actually live on the city?
No.
Were you given the contract as like a local gardener?
No, I'll tell you what happened. It was a bit of, we did some design and build work for down on the streets, and it's TMO. That's the other name. It's a TMO. So therefore, they have control over what contractors they use. And we got on well with the residents while we were building the street thing, and then the maintenance contract happened to come up, so they asked us to tender for it. So that's how we got it. We hadn't done maintenance before that. And I didn't know what I was doing. I just walked around the estate and wrote down how long I thought it might take to cut this bit and then cut that bit, and blah blah blah. Anyway, but it was just fluke.
Oh, so you just basically did some. When you said design work, was it like one-off design?
Yeah, one-off design on one of the streets. And while we were there doing that, and we got on, we met the rest of the group. Obviously, and we got on well with them. And they said, "Oh, you know, our contract's coming up there. Why don't you tender for that?" Which we did against the other contractors. You know. So that was the breakthrough sort of moment.
And that meant you had, so while you were doing the maintenance, were you new to maintenance, you were able, that's why you were able to adapt. Is that what you're saying? Is because you weren't in the
exactly. We were just employed to do the maintenance. That's what the contract said. So all the nice stuff wasn't on the contract. Definitely.
So you're saying you came from a more not necessarily a normal maintenance background, you came with more creative ideas?
Well, I guess we did do design stuff. Obviously, gardening is, I love gardening, I love plants. So basically, I'm a gardener, but I did do design work as well. So yeah, I did come from that a little bit more. So I probably had a few more skills or a bit more experience of trying different things, and the confidence to try, I guess, and the enthusiasm to try. Because most of these things we did for free to start, so we would do a small area without any cost, and then we would see how they like it. And if people did like it, and they wanted more of that, then sometimes we could get money to do that.
Do they have like a tenants association where they're like?
Yeah, it's a TMO, which is quite an amazing thing. It basically gives pretty much all the power to the resident group and takes it away from the council. That's why TMOs and councils often are.
Yeah, and hence why it
certainly
says
were
resident
nice
by
to it.
resident.
Very upset. Sorry?
That's why it says resident run by resident.
Exactly, sorry, yeah. So that was obviously, if this had been a standard, I couldn't have quoted for all the council estates.
Yeah, you
I'm only a tiny company, it's only me and my brother did this. So, so the TMO was a key thing for us actually. And but the TMOs are really difficult and lots of quite a few to be fair, simply because they rely on residents and volunteers. This is why I think the paid system needs to be funded and good, because you just prop up the volunteer thing, and because you need to, because volunteers shouldn't do all this slot. I can't remember who was saying earlier, they were on the Zoom, they were saying that they didn't want to be, volunteers didn't want to be viewed as someone who just did all the boring stuff. They wanted to do creative stuff, you know. So we do the boring stuff because we're there paid.
Any time for one more?
Young people on a Hackney estate like this are not often interested in plants per se, but they're very interested in a plant. Did you get any problems with people growing their own to smoke?
I wouldn't say, we didn't have any problem with growing real. What we did have is we had problems with a plant, Biopsis, the little pink low-grade plant that really stunk of weed. And we planted it all over the place because it was really good. And we had a massive issue with it because people were jumping over fences and even we gave the mistake of planting it near the air conditioning for the supermarket as well. That was a total. God, they didn't really find out it was us that was the problem because we had to take it out. No, I mean, I'd say, you know, if they want to grow that, that is gardening.
Okay, on that note, thank you, John, very much. Well, thank you everybody for coming today. Again, I really appreciate your support and sticking with us through this tricky period. So the LGN has gone through some big changes. Sadly, we lost two of our members. They passed away. Fiona Conley was one of the founding members, passed away sadly, and also Robert Player, who was a well-loved horticulturist and garden associate. He was a garden associate director, so that was hard for us. We also had several of our members step down. So Claire from Buckingham Palace until today, and Sue from Chelsea Physic. We've had Geraldine from Chiswick House gone as well to she's in Dorset actually. Yeah. And Mark Lane, who was also a founding member of the London Funds Network. He has stepped down from his role. And so I would like to invite Claire up to read a speech from Mark that he's given us to just talk about his role in the LGN and its future.
Hello everybody. So this is Mark's own words, so I'll quote it. Back in 2009, Fiona Crumley, Rosie Atkins and I met to develop Fiona's idea of creating an opportunity for London-based gardeners to come together, learn and network with each other. We were conscious that so many of us professional, experienced gardeners were siloed in our own oases limited to the opportunities of development and support. Over the years, we have had the chance to develop this aim with amazing backing from all the committee members, as well as significant sign-up from themselves. There are representatives of London Gardens across London and now even further afield. It is also with the phenomenal support of Roots and Shoots, Chelsea Physic Garden, and more recently, Royal Botanical Gardens Kew, all providing great venues where we're able to stage these learning events. I would like to extend my good wishes to everyone and hope that you all will continue to support and develop the organisation well into the future.
On behalf of the LGN, thank you and the other members that stand that have given their dedication and time, especially Mark as well, who's one of the founders that we just heard from, and I'd like to put in some gifts. So we have wine. Yeah, I just want to say thank you from me to my team, the committee, and we've got a lovely new group of members. We've got Charles, who works at Q, in social media. We've got Sophie, who's our treasurer. Who have we got in the corner there? Oh, hello. Adam, yeah, so he's from Parks, Michael's been with us for a while. Stephen, thank you for all your help. And,
forever.
Yeah, Stephen's been here forever. And I just want to give a really special thanks to Lucy, because she's done so much work behind the scenes. So yeah, thank you so much. I just want to direct you to our website, so please do sign up for our emails and you'll receive all the news and the London Gardens Network.co.uk, and you will get all the updates on upcoming seminars, and we'll also usually do something in the autumn as well. So you can stay connected there. You can subscribe to our Instagram, which is Charles.
Gardens Network.
And I think that's it from me. So thank you very much. If you want an extra lunch, there's some left over. And yeah, feel free to mingle and chat and enjoy the gardens and the lovely weather. Thank you so much. One more thing.